I do believe in the sanctity of life. And I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it
Joy?
feels like,
What?
Serious?
I mean,
Joy
I
at a
guess I would
man's
say
execution?
maybe not joy, but certainly not, no, certainly not empathy. Because again,
We're
this is a
watching
man
the
responsible
footage.
for
How can this make you joyful? This guy's a
So here,
husband, he's a
like
father,
billions,
and he's being
and
gunned down in the middle of Manhattan.
so are
Why
the
does that
tens
make
of
you
thousands of
joyful?
Americans that he murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans who died.
There is something very odd going on, but I think actually this may be a result of echo chambers and things like that online that are forming and are justifying and feeling empathy for the unaliving of UnitedHealth CEO earlier this week. Hi everyone, my name is Christopher Balkaran. I am the host of the Open Minds Show right here on YouTube. If you're liking my content, definitely hit that like button and subscribe, share, tell all your friends. I'm trying to interject a level of political moderation back into our discourse today, folks. It's really interesting to see what's happening online when it comes to the unaliving of the UnitedHealth CEO. There seems to be many people online who are justifying this killing. In fact, if you go on Reddit and you just scroll through the comments, you would be surprised at just the number of people who are 100% on board with this action, whether or not they actually believe in the unaliving part. They're very empathetic to the actions of the killer. In fact, many have argued and go into quite great detail about what private healthcare has done to themselves and to their family members. And people share common ailments that they've gone to the hospital for and what has happened as a result. And what's also interesting here, folks, people are openly very aggressive towards those that are saying, hey, by the way, this is in fact still an action that is illegal and someone did end up dying here. Now, you might be asking yourself, how did we get here to a point of justifying this action? Well, it turns out it's not as wild as we might think. Moral outrage on injustice leads to us to frame things in morality versus immorality. And we see this a lot from politicians and from others when they start saying things that we're fighting the good fight and this position is morally right and that position is immoral by its nature. It's one thing to talk about that on the surface, but what that does on a deeper level is actually it puts people in a position to allow empathy into their hearts and minds as the guiding principle for how they go about understanding an issue. So moral outrage includes looking at the underrepresented groups, environmental destruction, exploitative labor practices, and somehow justifying violent action as a formal redress or revolutionary justice. Now, you might be asking, how does this actually happen? How does one go from, empathizing with the oppressed to justifying violent action? It actually starts when we stop talking to people who share different opinions. In fact, I would argue, just reading through the Reddit comments, Reddit is becoming an echo chamber of those like-minded individuals who are sharing their perspectives on this particular action. And many are saying, even with this action, it won't be enough to upend and change the private healthcare industry. In fact, some have even gone as far to say that this needs to happen more regularly. And to others, I mean, it is pretty wild to see and read the comments online, but that group cohesion and echo chamber is real. The other part to this is that it's not just people on a Reddit thread, all saying the same thing. It's also jumping on those who are saying, hang on a second, this is still an illegal act. Someone still was unalived as a result of this. That doing away with that individual, ostracizing that individual, shaming that individual is as old as time itself. And that person or that unwillingness to engage strengthens a group echo chamber. It strengthens a group's kind of view and also strengthens their resolve even when it's an illegal act. Again, thinking about it in terms of revolutionary justice. Most times what I've seen online in Reddit threads are these feelings of hopelessness and despair. Someone took their loved one, their ailing grandmother, ailing mother to the hospital, got a massive bill, couldn't afford it, or that person was denied service as a result of a pre-existing condition, etc. private healthcare looking at ways to get out of paying for health-related ailments. And so as a result of the feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, it pushes people to start viewing violent acts as the only remaining method to produce meaningful transformation. And so this, in fact, is the result, the culmination of what has happened online. Now, folks, I did find this online. Let me try to find it for you. This is not unlike what some, if you remember back to 9/11, if you're as old as me and you remember 9/11, you remember some more left-leaning thinkers were very much saying that 9/11 was a direct result of US imperialism, of what the United States was doing abroad. 9/11 was a result of fomenting all of this anger and hatred throughout the world. Here's Noam Chomsky speaking on 9/11, a prominent left-leaning thinker.
First time in history that the West was attacked, received the kind of attack that it carries out routinely in the rest of the world, which is a historical event.
So if you hear what Noam Chomsky said, he said, this is the first time the U.S. has received something it carries out routinely across the rest of the world. Now, I'm not trying to put words in Chomsky's mouth, but he's a prominent left-leaning thinker at the time of 9/11 and still is. And one thing that I gather from his perspective is, well, you've done this abroad and now it happens to your home. Almost a very dismissive act of 9/11, very much unaligned with those more moderates and those on the right who were outraged completely. Of course, those on the left too, who were outraged completely at the acts of 9/11. That doesn't come through too much with Noam Chomsky's commentary. And it's not just Chomsky. There are a host of other left-leaning thinkers who also echoed, well, this is just a result of American imperialism. And I find the same is happening online when it comes to the UnitedHealth CEO's unaliving. People are like, well, this is what happens when private healthcare goes too far. And that shrugging of the shoulders is something we all need to be very cognizant of, because it can justify extreme measures like the unaliving of certain people. Now, I will say, how you might be asking, Christopher, how do we undo this? How do we actually move from this? Well, the first thing we have to do, I think, shamelessly, we actually have to promote civic engagement of different perspectives. And so one thing I would urge Reddit and other moderators on Reddit is there are people with different opinions, and I don't know if they're getting the same type of voice. And maybe the moderators need to step in a little bit more and say, hang on, like, I've noticed everyone is sharing the exact same opinion. That's groupthink. That's echo chamber. Let's break that up. Let's make sure that's not happening. It's a very tough job to do, but we need to have different voices here as well. There needs to be more moderate voices who are saying things like policy reforms and using that as a tool to actually put forward policy ideas. Now, some may feel like, oh, it's hopeless and it's helpless to work within the system. That despair is a very powerful emotion. And so we have to catch ourselves when we're feeling that powerful despair, because it can otherwise justify extreme measures. So addressing the root causes, making sure that there's more transparency, there's patient advocacy panels, etc. This can help at least show people that there are policy avenues where their needs can be heard. But also, I think we need to make sure that what we're doing online is actually, in some ways, we have to be cognizant of groupthink and like this potential radicalization. And I know that sounds very like left-leaning, but there is the potential for radicalization that's happening online. Now, I think it may be under the guise of frustration with the healthcare system, but that makes it a little bit more, it's like a more slippery to grab onto. Because if you take what some would consider a noble cause of fighting against private healthcare and making things more public, I think many may agree with that, or agree at least that private healthcare is doing damage. But you see, that noble cause then allows a lot of more radical actions to be taken because of moral outrage. And so while it's important to talk about the challenges of private healthcare, it's also important to balance that with, hang on, it is a business and it is running like a business. How do we voice our opinions in a structured manner to government that gives them policy options to chew on, as well as to our democratically elected state legislators and senators to do so as well? I don't know. I mean, I recognize the frustration, but the frustration can allow oneself to justify extreme actions. So I'd love to know what you think, though. What do you think of what's happening on Reddit? What do you think is happening in the news? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always, my name is Christopher, the host of the Open Minds Show. Leave a like, subscribe, share, tell all your friends, trying to inject a level of moderation back into our discourse. Thanks again, everybody.